welcome to this next episode of So That Reminds Me, Reminder Publishing's bi-weekly podcast discussing Western Mass news. I'm Chris Mazza.
And I'm Tyler Garnett.
And we'll be your hosts for today's episode. In this episode, we'll be talking about a few of the interesting topics happening in Western Massachusetts. But before that, Tyler, welcome back. You just had some vacation time.
Yes, I did. I was excited to have a few days off in a row. Me and my family, we rented an Airbnb over in Cape Cod. I've never been before, shockingly enough.
Really? What did you think of the Cape?
I thought the Cape was very nice. We had some good weather. You can't really beat a vacation when you can just drive to it. You know, don't have to hop on a flight or anything and enjoy the nice weather. So I thought it was really nice. Had a little different taste, a little different downtown taste too. So it was really nice.
Now, whereabouts were you staying?
We stayed in Barnstable.
Okay, yeah.
And, we explored a few different towns. Hyannis was one of the towns we went to a bunch. They had some just nice outdoor patio bars and stuff to do during the day, different beaches nearby, and the Airbnb we stayed at was really nice. So they had passes to all these places. We could barbecue in a house. So it was more of a nice, chill vacation. So it was definitely needed and definitely nice.
Excellent. Yeah, you mentioned that it's nice to be able to drive somewhere and not get on a plane. Well, sometimes, depending on the bridge traffic, a plane ride could be short.
True.
But yeah, I haven't been to the Cape in a while for a vacation. The last time that I was on the Cape was actually a friend's wedding, and it was in September, and it rained. But that actually created a cool situation where we had to find something, to explore. We obviously weren't going to the beach or anything like that. And we found I think it was in Dennis or maybe it was Yarmouth, but that area, we found a pirate museum.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Apparently a pirate ship got shipwrecked off the coast of the Cape, during a hurricane. And for a long time, nobody could find it because of like the sandy nature of the ocean floor that's there. So it was actually buried by the sand for some time. And then back in the 80s, I think, a guy actually rediscovered it. And he, over time, has been bringing up artifacts from it. So I went into this thing thinking this was going to be like one room with a few things in it, but it's a full-scale museum, like dedicated to this ship and its crew. And there are all kinds of cool artifacts, and there's actually a room where they kind of explain the process of reclaiming these items, because on top of everything else, the sand and stuff over time, it chemically bonded to this stuff, so you can't just chip it away. Or there's a chemical process for removing the sediment and everything off of it. So it was this really cool thing where there was the history element and the science element to it, and how we discovered it and everything. So a little bit of a tangent there, but that's the last time that I was on the Cape. But yeah, so I'm glad you had a good time. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So just so everybody is aware, we are recording this a little bit early. We're recording this on the 26th, and this is for our July 5th episode. So seeing as it's right around Independence Day, happy Independence Day to everybody.
Happy Independence Day.
And before we get into anything else, Tyler, are you aware of Springfield's significance to the Revolutionary War?
No, I am not, but I am interested to hear or learn about it.
All right, so you know the Springfield Armory.
Yes.
Or you've at least heard of the Springfield Armory. Well, the Springfield Armory was originally the Springfield Arsenal, and it was established by General George Washington in the 1770s to act as the major arsenal for the United States during the War for Independence.
Yeah.
And it was chosen because of its site, how close it was to major roadways that head east, south, north, and west, and also where it was positioned on the Connecticut River. So on top of everything else, further south, there's the Enfield Falls, which prevented British ships from coming up the coast to attack the arsenal. So, and then over the years, the arsenal became the armory, et cetera, et cetera. But so it was a major weapons depot for the Revolution.
Wow, that's actually really cool. I'm pretty interested in like American history and stuff like that, so I didn't know. I'll have to even look more into that. Is this something you could check out and see?
Yeah, the armory is located, up on the hill there. It's actually on the campus of Springfield Technical Community College, and it's a site that you can go to and visit, and it's actually pretty cool.
I'll have to check it out. That's actually really, really cool, and some cool knowledge. The day after when this drops will be the day after the 4th of July or Independence Day, so that's some cool information right around this time.
So now let's take a look at some of the topics we're going to get to in this week's episode. We're going to talk about a meeting between area mayors and local tourism marketers, a recent announcement of funding for neighborhood initiatives in Springfield, State Senator John Velas's reaction to the expansion of the HERO Act. The Jabish Brook Middle School issue is now officially been put to bed in Belchertown, and the start of the Summit House Sunset Concert Series. And we'll get into those after a couple short messages.
Would you like to put your products and services before more than 2,500 potential customers in just one day? That's what a booth at the Prime Living Senior Expo can do for your business. If your goal is connecting with consumers age 50 plus, let the Prime Living Senior Expo help you reach this exploding market. To book your space for September 8th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in MGM's Aria Ballroom, contact your sales representative or visit primelifeexpo.com. Do you know someone over 60 in our region who is legendary? Nominate them for the inaugural Age of Excellence Awards. Glen Meadow is thrilled to announce this exciting new event dedicated to honoring the older adults in our community who embody the vigor and purpose that come with age and experience. Nominations are due July 26th. Submit online at glenmeadow.org/Age of Excellence Awards, or hard copies can be found at the Glen Meadow front desk, 24 Tabor Crossing in Longmeadow.
And we're back. For our first topic this week, members of the Greater Springfield Convention and Visitors Bureau sat down with the mayors of Springfield, Agawam, and Chicopee for a roundtable on how to boost area tourism. Members of the Bureau said residents, including the mayors, needed to do more to promote it. According to Mary Kay Wydra, president of the Bureau, the Western Mass tourism industry is worth $1.3 billion a year. According to a study by Tourism Economics, direct spending from regional tourism equaled $2.3 million per day and contributed $136 million to state and local taxes.
Now, White Lion Brewing Company President Ray Berry, who was in attendance, encouraged collaboration, stressing stakeholders, quote, can't operate in silos. All three mayors said that they were in support of the industry. Springfield Mayor Dominic Sarno called himself a firm believer as the chief of a city that's home of the Basketball Hall of Fame, a casino, and a professional hockey team, among other things. Tourism spending in the city spreads throughout the region, he said. Agawam Mayor Christopher Johnson also noted the importance of Six Flags and his 3,000 seasonal employees. 80% of those employees are Massachusetts residents. And Chicopee Mayor John View said the city is working to reestablish its downtown. Now, this seems to be something that comes up fairly often, is that they're saying, "Oh, we got to increase tourism. Tourism's such a big part of the economy in Western Massachusetts." And I think that Ray Berry kind of hit something on the head here, in that so much of it is very much siloed. What's happening in Springfield isn't necessarily correlating or connecting with what might be happening at Six Flags. And on top of everything else, Springfield and Amherst, though geographically not all that far from each other, might as well be in different countries.
Yeah,
it really is fragmented. And, I don't think that there's really ever been an effective, cohesive approach to marketing Western Mass and the Pioneer Valley as a whole. I mean, on top of everything else, we've got it's a kind of an expansive area, but you have an area that, even if you incorporate the Berkshires into that, this is all stuff that is all kind of interconnected in a way. The four western counties of Massachusetts are almost a state unto themselves in most other respects. They're more connected to Connecticut than they are to, say, Boston.
Yeah.
So we don't really connect with Boston's tourism efforts.
Yeah.
So you would think that there would be more of an effort locally to combine efforts to kind of, raise all ships, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I think that is a great point, especially said by Ray Berry, because, you can't operate in silos, especially, I know you mentioned how big some of these cities and towns even are. You can be driving in one for 20 minutes, and you're still in the same town, which isn't a bad thing. But, being so close, especially with some major tourism attractions, having a professional hockey team, a casino, basketball Hall of Fame, having Six Flags and all these places so near each other, it's important to be able to work together to figure out how you can get more people to view your city, want to stay in the city, and want to keep coming back.
Well, and I mean, something that's interesting here too is there's talk about the casino, there's talk about Six Flags. I was a little surprised that Will Reichelt wasn't part of this, especially with the Big E being such a big thing. Maybe he had another commitment. I don't know. But the Big E is another one of those big, tourist destinations. But the interesting thing is a lot of these, they're designed to keep people in. These are not things that are necessarily, okay, somebody's coming here and we're going to encourage them to go do something somewhere else. You're at the casino. The casino wants you in there spending money there. You're at the... People don't want you leaving the amusement park to go do something else. They want you in the amusement park. The Big E is basically, I mean, it's basically they're like, hey, everything you could possibly need while you're at the fair is going to be here. You want to have dinner, you want to have a drink, you want to see entertainment, whatever. They market themselves that way as like this, So yeah, these are things that draw people in, but how much are those things particularly, spinning off? So there are a lot of other things that Western Massachusetts offers that I think don't get accentuated the same way. And having a broader approach could kind of allow those other interests to gain some visibility. Whereas right now, a lot of the things that are gaining visibility are the things with the deep marketing pockets, like a gaming company or like the Big E or something like that.
Yeah, no, of course. And, I know especially I, cover Chicopee and stuff, so I talk to Mayor John View a bunch. I go to a bunch of events down there, specifically in the downtown area, and I know that's an area we said he's working to reestablish. I know they're working on the old Central Library. That's right next to City Hall. A lot of restaurants, a lot of businesses are opening up. I go to a bunch of ribbon cutting ceremonies. And that's all great for obviously Chicopee. But, I think working together and just working with other towns and seeing how they may be doing something and being able to learn from them will definitely help because, like you said, it does help. If you have a casino, you want people to stay there. There's a hotel attached to it. But,
Right.
Not everyone has the luxury of that. So, how do you continue to work with these other communities on how someone will want to keep going to, say, a certain restaurant or a certain bar, if you have another museum, if you have something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one other thing you mentioned, the Chicopee specifically, is Chicopee is an interesting study because for a long time, so much of the restaurant and destination kind of stuff was Memorial Drive, and it's just like you had like that commercial area, and that's where all of that kind of stuff was focused. So it's interesting to see the shift back to kind of like reestablishing a quote unquote main street or a downtown, which I think that more and more communities are realizing the necessity of having a strong downtown. Whereas in some communities it was. Neglected's not quite the right word, but the appreciation for having that kind of commerce and what a benefit it is it just wasn't appreciated as much.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's sometimes even hard to just determine what is the downtown area. Sometimes some areas are just have so many businesses and so many, like you said, Memorial Drive. I know they have a lot of big name companies down there, the Walmart next to every other fast food restaurant and other business you can think of and name. So it's always tough to decide, where's the downtown area, where are you going to work through, and where are you going to try and build around.
It's funny. Mike Dobbs, our retired executive editor, spent a long time in Chicopee. He was a longtime editor for the Chicopee Herald even before Reminder Publishing bought the Herald, going back that far. And one of the things that story that he's told a few times was when the Buffalo Wild Wings came to Chicopee looking to establish a restaurant there. One of the city councilors was so excited that there was going to be a place where people could watch sports and eat wings in Chicopee. Yeah. And it was just one of those things I was just like, wait, there's nowhere else to do that in Chicopee? And of course that was something that was placed on Memorial Drive. So, it's interesting to see now, and I think that probably there was somewhere else in Chicopee that you could have, but this is again going back to that, who's got the marketing pockets on top of everything else.
No, of course.
But also, we're seeing the shift back with restaurants and other establishments, more shifting away from that strip mall kind of format and, kind of trying to reestablish those downtown areas. So.
Definitely.
All right, for our next topic, Springfield Mayor Dominic Sarno recently announced nearly $3 million in funding that will be directed specifically toward neighborhood projects and initiatives. Sarno and members of his staff introduced a new Neighborhood Enhancement Fund, which will fund projects identified as needs by neighborhood residents during meetings between the mayor's staff and each of the city neighborhoods, councils, and civic associations. The first round of funding totaled $2.87 million. This money is in addition to the $100,000 in ARPA funding neighborhoods received last year for what Sarno called, quote-unquote, pet projects. Sarno made the announcement in front of the tennis courts at Greenleaf Park in 16 acres, where one of the largest pools of money was allocated to convert 2 of the 3 courts into pickleball courts. The courts, which are anticipated to be open by next spring, come with a price tag of $450,000.
The Sarno administration also touted almost $50,000 invested in anti-panhandling signs. These signs, which are currently being designed and will be sent to the neighborhood councils for approval, will advise motorists not to give to panhandlers and direct them to any resources to which they should donate. Neighborhood councils and city officials identified high problem areas and will install the signs in the near future. Other investments included park and sidewalk, upgrades and repairs, speeding enforcement and safety initiatives, as well as roadway redesign work, affordable housing plans, and lighting and beautification efforts. Sarno said the benefit of this fund is it will support neighborhoods citywide. He explained that some neighborhoods are often not eligible for funding through ARPA or Community Development Block Grants because those funding sources usually target more disadvantaged census tracts.
Now, I find this interesting for a couple of reasons. First is the aspect of this is money that's being allocated to all neighborhoods. Like he said, there are stipulations and requirements attached to the ARPA funding and community development block grants, as he said, where their purpose is to improve areas that a lot of times are depressed and don't have necessarily the resources or may have been neglected in some way, whether that be financially or in terms of attention that they're getting. That doesn't mean that these other neighborhoods don't have needs. And a lot of times you'll hear it's just like, that's a valid concern, but there's no money for it, So that's nice in that. But some of the spending here, I have a couple of thoughts, and I'm focusing these thoughts on the things I actually covered this press event. So, and the major things that they highlighted were these pickleball courts and the anti-panhandling signs. So we'll start with the pickleball courts because this is something that we're seeing across our coverage area. Pickleball is this really growing sport. We're seeing pickleball courts going up everywhere. And just for some context for my perception of pickleball, I graduated high school in 2000.
Okay.
Pickleball was the game that we played in high school. This stupid, silly game. Sorry, I shouldn't call it stupid. People love it, but this was my perception of it when I was in high school. My perception in high school was this was the stupid, silly game that we played when we were stuck in the gym and we couldn't go outside, during gym class. And it just to see it go from that to its immense popularity now. I mean, my dad just retired and he lives in North Carolina and he's into pickleball now, and so it's just it seems this. So there's this boom right now, but with these kinds of things, I always wonder: is this just a fad? Are we investing all this money in something that is not going to be of interest or of use even 10 years from now? And my context for this is I'm standing in front of these tennis courts. Now, and I grew up in this area. I spent most of my formative years in 16 acres. And I remember when skate parks were all the rage. Every community had to have a skate park.
Yeah.
And Springfield spent a bunch of money to install like a skate park installation on that tennis court, because nobody was really using the tennis courts at that time.
Yeah.
So they spent the money on that. And then within a couple of years, they weren't being used. It wasn't, being kept up, and now it doesn't exist. And now they're tennis courts again, and then they're going to make it something else. So it's one of those things where I always wonder if the moment supersedes the long-term planning. And to me, for a community the size of Springfield with the budget that it has, $450,000 isn't that much money. But to me, $450,000 is still a lot of money. And these are city funds. These are taxpayer dollars that are being used for this. So that's just something that I'm just like wondering, are we funding a fad? You know?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. I never thought about it like that, because obviously all I have thought about is how fast it is growing across the country. Pickleball, everywhere you hear about it now, pickleball tournaments, another court's going here or there. It's interesting to think, honestly, if you're looking back and, having skate parks everywhere. I think that's a little different, because obviously that is not taking anything away from pickleball. A little more skillful, to skate on whatever the half pipes or the rails or anything like that is. And that's kind of almost like a niche kind of thing to put, if you put it over a tennis court. I think these pickleball courts can also be tennis courts most of the time, which kind of helps a little bit in the cost of the project, unless you completely turn into a pickleball court. Because I know right by me and my girlfriend's apartment, they just added 3 new pickleball courts, and we're pretty excited about that one. Not sure how much the cost was, but we definitely will be using that. But yeah, it is interesting to think about, to see where it will be in, say, 5-10 years, because I know it's definitely blowing up everywhere. Everyone's playing it, whether you're young or old, and everyone's loving it. But, that is an interesting point you raised.
Now, are you... would it be a pickleballer? Like, what do you call somebody who plays pickleball?
Yeah, I don't even know, honestly. I'll call myself not great for right now, but hopefully we have a long summer ahead of us. But yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's just like a fun game, little like tennis, obviously. But it's just fun to play for an hour or so here and there.
So, and the other thing that they really highlighted at this press event was the anti-panhandling signs. Now, panhandling it's been a growing issue. I think especially since the pandemic, it's become much more of a visible problem, but it's been a problem for areas even before that. I know that Holyoke for a long time has had an issue with it. Mm-hmm. There was a city councilor who famously encouraged people to, quote, "don't feed the animals," quote, unquote. I think
I've heard that one.
So, it's something that has been an issue. On top of everything else, though, it's if I'm understanding it correctly, it's protected by the First Amendment. So you can't just kick people off the
Sure.
off the corner. So I question the effectiveness of these signs. Granted, again, it's $50,000. It's actually a little less than $50,000. But how effective is this going to be? And is it just adding one more distraction to the roadways more than anything else? I don't necessarily see it as a benefit. I don't think it's going to curb a couple of the areas that I frequent is the X intersection in Springfield. There's always at least one person there, and quite honestly, on top of everything else, they'll walk into the street. They're walking into traffic. They're not just standing on the side of the road. I don't think a sign is going to deter them from doing that.
Yeah.
Also, coming off of 91 over by just past the Basketball Hall of Fame on Columbus Avenue is another spot where you'll see them a lot. And this is not like I said, this is not a Springfield area. We've talked about Holyoke. I have family in Holyoke, so I see them there regularly. We even see them here in East Long Meadow out by the grocery stores. So it's not something that is exclusive to Springfield. I certainly understand that Springfield is hearing residents' concerns about this, and this is one of the few things that they can do to respond, but I'm just not sure how effective, if at all, this is going to be it's not going to prevent anybody from standing there. So basically what they're trying to do is say, hey, if they figure out that nobody's giving them money, then they won't be on that corner anymore. But how many people are going to be persuaded by the sign?
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point because, when I was reading this article as well, I found it pretty interesting that some money was going towards this. Call me naive. I didn't even know signs like this were even a thing in other places. And that was kind of my main thought. And I'm glad you brought it up was, kind of the effectiveness or what the goal of these signs were going to be. Because I know even if a sign like that goes up, one, like you said, it could just be another distraction on the road, unless it's placed at the stoplight or stop sign near that. Who can read something that quick? Is it really going to stop people from standing there? Is it going to have people read it? Is it going to, deter them from giving some money and stuff like that? So it is an interesting pot of money going to something that I'm learning about for the first time, really.
Now, and the mayor did say that there are they do have police units who do outreach with these individuals who are on the street corner. Sure. And do try to direct them to services. So this isn't the sole thing that they're doing. But it's certainly, I can see giving people information as to, hey, you want to help these people, this is how to do it, because it is going to include a number that will, that you can call to, find out where you can send the money to, to help people in need.
Gotcha.
So, this isn't, I don't want to make this sound like it's, the one thing that the city is doing, to address this. The other thing that the mayor just mentioned in passing, and I was remiss in not following up with him on this, admittedly, was he mentioned, well, we'll see if we get challenged on this, like legally challenged on this, because, and I didn't, unfortunately, ask him what the challenge could be. Obviously, it's something that's on his mind or something that has been brought up to him as, there could be a legal challenge to this. So I'd be interested in learning more about if there's any legal liability or anything that the city is opening itself up to, even by putting up a sign, which would make the worth of the signs even less to me as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely interested to see what the signs do say entail on them. I know they'll be sent and have to be approved by the neighborhood councils, it says. So it will be interesting to see this kind of going forward, as well as all the other investments included in the upgrades, repairs, and safety signs and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that one of the big things that they were talking about, there was a lot of, in the list of things that they were funding, there's a lot of pedestrian safety, whether it be on the roads or sidewalk projects and stuff like that, and a lot of traffic enforcement and things like that, which there are certainly roadways in Parker Street where we was one of them, and I believe that there was also some money allocated to speeding enforcement in that area as well, which on top of everything else, you've got a community center there, you've got the park and everything like that, and just a busy road and a busy intersection. So, there are other things that are necessary that wouldn't have been funded otherwise. So that's nice. So I don't want to sound like a total downer about this. There's some good things that this money is going towards as well. But those were a couple that they highlighted that I kind of just had some serious questions about.
Yeah,
so.
Of course.
And we'll be right back after another quick break.
Every month, Reminder Publishing's Go Local magazine features the best Western Mass and Northern Connecticut businesses, with articles on new storefronts, coffee shops, restaurants, and more. Go Local magazine is your resource to find the best businesses to frequent in the area. Go Local also features original recipes, how-to pages on festive crafts, a listing of places to go, and experiences to enjoy over the course of the month, and so much more. Pick up Go Local magazine at hundreds of businesses, banks, gas stations, and restaurants all over Western Mass and Northern Connecticut. Or check out Go Local magazine at thereminder.com.
We get it. You're busy, but you want to be connected to your local community. If you're not reading The Reminder, Western Mass's free weekly newspaper, you're missing out on the heartbeat of your town. Stay in the loop with all the latest buzz, from local stories to community updates and exciting events. It's all in The Reminder. Just log on to thereminder.com and dive into the hometown news you love. To subscribe to receive The Reminder at your home, call 413-788-1316. Don't miss a beat. Your town, your stories, your community for over 60 years. The Reminder. We are hometown news.
And we're back. Next, we're going to talk about enhancements to a state law that provides additional protection for veterans. State Senator John Velas recently saw a successful amendment adopted to the Expanded HERO Act that will protect veterans from predatory claim sharks that target veterans who are seeking assistance filing claims with the Federal Department of Veteran Affairs. The Westfield Democrat, who is a veteran himself and chair of the Joint Committee on Veterans and Federal Affairs, explained that these claim shark companies promise increased disability ratings or expedited claim decisions from the VA. Instead, their goal is to entrap veterans into paying exuberant fees for what he called minimal assistance. He said it is beyond disgusting that veterans are being taken advantage of in this way.
Now, under federal law, it is currently illegal to charge hefty fees for assisting or consulting veterans with filing VA benefits claims. However, there are no criminal penalties for these claim sharks. The amendment adopted by the Senate would prohibit someone from receiving compensation for assisting in a veteran's benefit matter, except where allowed by federal law. It also means these bad actors can be sued under state consumer laws. As of this recording, the final HERO Act bill was awaiting adoption by the conference committee. I mean, I think that Senator Velas put it as bluntly as you possibly could. Yeah. It's disgusting, and it's you're taking advantage of people who are who have obviously dedicated themselves to a level of service that most don't, and then you have the other side, the least common denominator here, who are trying to victimize these people, who are just trying to get benefits that they rightly deserve. I think that part of the problem here, too, is the process, the VA process, and I've heard this from family and friends who are veterans or, who know people who are veterans who are dealing with this process, is it's so hard to navigate, and the process can take so much time that people become desperate, and they're looking for, they're looking for any way to expedite their claim. Yeah. Or, a lot of times they're not even very well educated in how they're supposed to go about it, so they end up frustrated and they're looking for help, and unfortunately that's where these kinds of things swoop in, and it's with no real incentive to not do it. There's no there doesn't seem to be any real harsh penalties for it. And it's probably a bad comparison, but Springfield police were recently talking about how violent criminals in Springfield don't have much fear of escalating their nefarious deeds because they don't have any fear of the courts. And it seems like this is on a much more quote unquote white collar kind of way, but the same kind of mentality. It's just like there's not a huge risk for them with this.
Yeah, no, that's a great point too. And I know you mentioned, you said I'm not too familiar with the VA process itself, but I can imagine if you're relying on some of the assistance and stuff like that, you're gonna get a little desperate. Everyone's in different points in their lives, or at a time where they could really use this. And obviously, there's unfortunately people out there who are going to take advantage of this. Even just outside of this, I know there's so many phone scams, email scams, text scams that we deal with every single day. I'm sure after this podcast, I could look at my phone and there's a scam or something in my email. So it's unfortunate, and veterans are definitely the last people who should be having to worry about this. And these claim sharks don't have anything to fear if they're going to keep doing this. But now with this new bill, hopefully this amendment is soon adopted, or is soon adopted by the conference committee, and it can these claim sharks can kind of go away, and these events can go down.
And while I know that people may be frustrated with the process and everything, I'm going to encourage, if anybody is looking to to access their benefits and aren't sure about the process or anything like that, most communities have at least a regional veteran services officer at their disposal. So if you know who the one is in your community, I'd suggest reaching out to them. If not, somebody at town hall can. If you're not even sure where to start, Senator Vilas has always been a strong supporter of veterans, and even if you are not necessarily a constituent of his, if you reached out to his staff, I'm sure that they would do what they can to get you in touch with the people you need to get in touch with. I think that you're just, and this again, I've never had to try to access these benefits or anything like that. I am not a veteran, but I think that you're just destined to run into trouble if you start trying to find solutions independently. I know that's hard to work within the system. From what I've heard, the system it's antiquated. It's there's a lot of bureaucracy, and it's very, very frustrating, especially if you're somebody who is in pain in one way or another. But really, it behooves you to just stay the course as best you can and work with the people in your town or your region, who are there to advocate for you, because I think that is the biggest point here is these claim sharks feed off of desperation. So, as hard as it is, don't make that desperate move.
Yeah, I think you put it perfectly.
Up next is a topic we've talked about a lot lately, and now the story has reached its conclusion. The proposed Jabish Brook Middle School project has been officially tabled following a special town meeting on June 24th. As Peyton and Dennis had discussed during the last podcast, voters at the town election a week earlier decisively voted against a necessary debt exclusion override to fund the project. However, because the town meeting had already been scheduled and posted by the constable, it had to take place. Some residents attended, but there was not a quorum, so there were no votes taken. Reminder Publishing reporter Laura Mason had asked Select Board Vice Chair Lisa Lessard-Pearson whether the project will be revived in the future, but she declined to comment on that. What she did say was that the town needed to come together again, and it was in need of a cool-down period following such a contentious process.
For its part, at the June 20th emergency meeting, the Jabish Brook Building Committee voted to not continue with pursuing the project. Committee Chair Heidi Gudikens told Reminder Publishing that if the town decided to pursue any further renovation or construction projects at the Jabish Brook property, then it would be under the oversight of the Select Board. The proposal called for a new 113,000 square foot building to educate 475 students in grades 6 to 8 at the current school's property. With a total price tag of $122 million, the Massachusetts School Building Authority was anticipated to reimburse roughly 39% of the cost, leaving the town on the hook for $74.6 million. The anticipated average impact to taxpayers was an additional $815 annually. During discussions to the election, the building committee stated that a base repair of the middle school without state funding assistance would cost the town an estimated $88 million. However, the town is not currently under any state-regulated obligations to make improvements to the middle school.
Well, we've dedicated a lot of time on this podcast to this issue, and I'm not sure there's a lot more we can say, but this is basically the closing of this chapter of this story of it, which started a couple years ago, if I'm remembering everything correctly. It seems like eventually something is going to have to be done, but one of my major questions and the thing that I think hung up a lot of voters was, I don't know if they necessarily illustrated the need. It's just like, if you adequately explain to people why you need to spend this money, then I think that works better with people. And instead, a lot of this, and this was something that was talked about at an emergency select board meeting, was there were just a lot of accusations thrown around on both sides. People who weren't in support of the project were branded as people who didn't care about the kids or the education. And on the other side, people were accusing people of wasting their money. And I think that in most cases, if you can demonstrate the need, then there's a lot less pushback. There can still be questions about priorities and things like that, and if there are ways to lower the price tag and things like that. But the strong opposition to this, I think, came from, on top of everything else, people were looking at it and saying, we're not under any obligation to do this, so why are we doing it?
Yeah.
Especially at that price tag.
Yeah, no, that is something I think was a big problem too. I know, this project dates back to when I was covering Belchertown. I kind of saw it go through the feasibility study, the schematic designs, funding, choosing the OPMs, and everything like that. And I just knew every step along the way. I was attending the meetings, I was following along, writing articles, covering it. But a big concern always at the select board meetings when they talked about it was community members saying the town lacked communication, just stating when the project would be, how much it will cost the taxpayers. I know everything wasn't on the select board because a lot of the numbers didn't come out until a few months before these votes took place. But I know communication was also a big issue that people had a problem with. On top of it, like you said, to see that the school still needs the renovations without the state funding would still be an estimated $88 million, I think is interesting. But I think there needs to be a time now where they kind of take a look back and kind of figure out how they're going to fix this school in a sense, because I know I believe it's 50 or 60 years old, this school. And, they were talking about shutting down Cold Spring, another school, to fill more students in and kind of reconfigure the grades. So they definitely had a lot of plans in place. So to see this get shut down after a few years process, I'm sure they'll need a little bit of time to figure out what the next steps are.
Belchertown's an interesting community in a couple of ways. The big thing is it, not all that long ago, went through rapid growth. I believe it more than doubled in size in a very short amount of time. And I think that in some ways the town is still trying to grapple with how to operate as a larger entity than it used to. And communication is a big part of that. You're not, it's much easier to communicate to residents in a town the size of, say, Hamden, as opposed to even, a town the size of, Ludlow. So, there's differences there has to be differences in your approach. And I'm not criticizing the approach. I'm not educated enough in all the ways that they tried to get the this educational material across. I did find it a little funny that people, some people said, well, we weren't even aware of this. And it's just like, well, I'd suggest you read the reminder.
Yeah, that's how I felt at some meetings. I would sit at the meetings because I remember one of the topics was just to fund this special town election and special town meeting. I believe with all the ballots and all the workers and everything else that was included in it, I believe it was around $40,000 to $50,000 just to fund those two votes for this project. And I remember that was probably a couple-month conversation whether to use ARPA funds or find funds elsewhere.
Right.
Just for that. And during those meetings, community members were saying, what are we voting for? What is the project? How much is it going to cost? And they just had a bunch of questions that, one, I did write about in the paper. But we're also on public meetings that you could attend or were also live streamed everywhere. So it was definitely something that a lot of community members, I feel like, didn't know a lot about. And also, on the other hand, in other meetings, a big topic of conversation was they used the word budget deficit a lot. They were a town that were trying to get back on track in a sense with their budget. And while they were trying to do all of that, they had this whole MSBA process to fund a new school. And the vacant state school property was trying to get up and running with, adding affordable housing units there. So it was just a bunch of projects. So like you said, a booming town that was also trying to figure out their budget. So I think it was just a lot of things all happening at once here.
That's a really fair point. Yeah, I think that that's very interesting. It's hard to keep your eye on so many things happening at once, and especially understanding. A lot of these processes are convoluted.
Yeah,
I mean, especially when you're involving the state. Whether it's state-owned property or state funding or reimbursement. There's these convoluted processes to everything that people either get impatient about or they don't fully understand. And it's understandable, especially when you're being thrown information on all these different things at once. So that's a great point.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, there was plenty of, not zoning committees, the planning board meetings for the state school property going on, as there was other meetings every other week for the school project. So things like that definitely probably just all ended up being too much. But it's something I'm interested to see how Belchertown comes back from in the future, what their plan will be. But, I'm sure they'll definitely come up with something.
All right. And for our last item of the day, the Summit House Concert Series will return to Skinner State Park this July. The concerts were initially established by the Friends of Mount Holyoke Range, a nonprofit environmental conservation organization, in 1987.
The concert series will return on Thursday, July 11th, with Arcadian Viols, followed by a different band each Thursday until August 8th. The other performers will be SPF 4, Day, Hot Club of New England, and Zakina. Concert series organizer Dave Muser said there are only 110 indoor seats per concert and 60 porch tickets once all indoor seats are filled. With this in mind, he said it is best to order tickets ahead of time. Those interested in purchasing advance tickets will only cost them $12, and they can visit friendsofmhr.org. Tickets will be $15 at the gate at 6 p.m. day of, and will be cash only.
Well, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to go up to the Summit House, but it's really that Skinner State Park is one of my family's favorite places to go hike, and hiking to the Summit House is always something that we enjoy. I've never taken advantage of the concert series, but I could imagine how nice it's being up there, taking in a concert on top of everything else. It seems like it would be a great spot to go up, maybe pack yourself a picnic dinner so that you can have dinner and take in the views before the concert, and then enjoy the concert at the Summit House.
Yeah, no, I have not had the privilege of going up to the Summit House at all, but just from talking to Dave, looking on their website, and him sending me pictures of aerial views of the Summit House or when they took or when they hosted concerts here. It definitely looks like such a ideal place to enjoy time with friends, family, and enjoy just some music on a nice outdoor/indoor venue.
And you don't have to hike it. You can drive up there too. So
Even better.
even if you wanted to to go take a look at it, even without without the excursion, so to speak, there's that option as well. But yeah, it's a great spot. I'd encourage you taking a look when you have the opportunity.
Yeah, I definitely want to, and especially for either $12 or $15, and you can kind of bring your own food and stuff, your own chairs, and just enjoy the atmosphere and the music. I mean, I think it's definitely a nice low budget event that you can have a good time with. And it was great talking with Dave. He was very appreciative that someone was covering this. So I hope a lot of people hear this and attend.
And the great thing about this area, and this is one of those things that, getting back to the whole tourism aspect, is there are these kinds of concert series and things like that going on in all sorts of towns and all sorts of venues. So you could really find something that's going to be up your alley at almost any day of the week.
Yeah.
Between these concert series, and then you have some outdoor beer gardens, like Springfield has some. I know that Holyoke has the Armour Yard, and a lot of times there's performances that are involved with those kinds of things. There's a lot going on over the summer in Western Massachusetts. So whether it's the concert series at Mount Holyoke, or the or one of the other ones throughout the area, I encourage everybody to get out there and get to know your community, get to know some of the other communities. I mean, I feel like that's something that they could really capitalize on more broadly broadcasting to a wider audience.
No, that's a great point. I mean, that's one of the beauties of summer, just the live outdoor music.
Well, that will put a wrap on this episode of So That Reminds Me.
Thanks for listening, and we look forward to bringing you another episode in 2 weeks. Happy 4th of July, everyone.
Thanks for listening to So That Reminds Me, produced by Western Massachusetts news source Reminder Publishing. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, find the latest news at thereminder.com, and follow Reminder Publishing on Instagram at Reminder Publishing, on X at The Reminder MA, and on Facebook. Reminder Publishing, we are hometown news.